Other interesting political news, you have the UAW Livestream from Shawn Fain on good old September 14th. Only now we'll have my charming personality and my commentary. And unlike that video, my comments will be left open. Unless YouTube censors it. In which case you can always reach me on Twitter, put it on the at the Topping Show or at NICTOPPING. Nevertheless, the only time my comments have been disabled is when YouTube itself censored it. Ironically enough, when I had a video talking about censorship, that was actually the video title, and the others were about Bud Light. No other topics have they done that for. Interestingly enough, coincidence? No, I don't think so. Nevertheless, going to go to his live stream right now.
A lot. You've probably been all over this.
Unless I fat thumb the keyboard and accidentally play that Twitter video again. So this is Mr. Shawn Fain, who again, he's the president of the United Auto Workers. And in terms of, I believe they have about 150 to 100 and, actually I believe they have 147 current members as of we speak. Let me go ahead and I'll play this. And I think it gives a good little insight into the situation. And they do have good marketing. That graphic that they have roaring in is well done, well done. And again, I appreciate all comments, especially if you have suggestions how to make the show better. You want to put, because I'm looking for a software that will enable us to have the picture-in-picture during production. I tried a couple with the camera. I don't know if it's because it's a 4K camera or it's just not working right now and it crashes. So if you have suggestions, I appreciate the feedback. So as long as it's constructive, even if it's negative, I will read it. Without further ado. Oh, mistake number one. He didn't suit up. As all men should. Always suit up. It's a good rule of thumb. I'm only partially kidding. He is wearing what looks to be a windbreaker with the UAW, and he is in his office, which he has little, looks like a little camera, little selfie sticks, and he actually put up posters that says, UAW, stand up, end tears. But again, this is not the crying tears. No, they're actually people on the boycott, or rather, not boycott, in this case, the strike. They're actually smiling, having a good time. They're getting paid about $500 per week. It says end tiers. That's in regard to payment tiers specifically. And it says in smaller font, no more second-class workers. Now, without too much further ado.
Good evening, UAW family. I'm going to be brief because time's of the essence. For the past 24 hours, we've been actively bargaining with Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis.
Again, really quick note, Stellantis, they're the parent company, used to be on Fiat. They're a very large conglomerate similar to Volkswagen. Stellantis was a company that bought out Chrysler, which in itself owns Dodge and Jeep. And so now they're kind of a European company, but they went bankrupt in 2009, just like General Motors. But they actually kind of, they're now European owned. But they did, nevertheless, rise back from the ashes. Or in this case, perhaps a more apt metaphor would be the crashed Plymouth Prowler, perhaps. Or PT Cruiser, famous Chrysler vehicle.
For the first time in our union's history, we had all three companies bargaining right here at the Solidarity House, leading into the final hours of our strike deadline. We've been working hard, trying to reach a deal for economic and social justice for our members.
I'm sorry. I laughed there because he is a very apt politician in terms of keywords that get people excited. Really in politics, one of the key word people look for is social justice. It is a really big resonator, politically speaking, more on the left. And it means, kind of like in technology, what's the cloud? Social justice means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but I'll let him further explain.
We have been firm. We are committed to winning an agreement with the Big Three that reflects the incredible sacrifice and contributions UAW members have made to these companies. We've been open. The companies, the members, and the public know that what we've been fighting for. And we've been clear. Midnight on the evening of September 14th is a deadline. UAW family, that deadline is nearly here. Tonight, for the first time in our history, we will strike all three of the Big Three at once. We are using...
Fact check there. False. Although, in his lifetime, sure. I believe the last time was about 80 years ago. It is a very rare occurrence, I'll give him that, to have simultaneous strikes with all the big three. The big three, of course, being GM, Chrysler, and Ford.
A new strategy, the stand-up strike. We will call on select facilities, locals, or units to stand up and go on strike. Tonight, we call on 3 units to stand up and go on strike at midnight if we do not reach a tentative agreement in the next 2 hours.
Now, this is a very interesting thing. I was wondering what's the downside or upside of a stand-up versus a traditional strike, or like a strike across all the brands. So if every single UAW member were to strike, what would that impact be versus this? I think this is an interesting, if you look at they of course disabled all the comments, which of course, if you want to win people over to your side, allow conversations to happen. And again, as long as it's cordial, I think not everyone, but some people are open to listening to the other side. And that's how you gain hearts and minds, I think. First step is just starting a conversation. But in terms of affecting the business, you're going to shut down specific ones. That will cost them a lot less. The UAW has a fund of about $820 million to sustain a strike. So that way they're not going hungry, so to say. They have that big fund, and the people who are striking, they pay, I believe it's $500 per week, so that they still have an income while they're standing outside while they're striking. Which, of course, from a kind of a political strategy or chess move, it logistically makes sense. That way they don't have to sacrifice as much. They still have a income. I know it's not, depending on where you live, it's not a lot of money, or there are other variables, although $500 per week. $2,000 per month. Man, I wish I was making that much back then. Yeah. Depending on if it's an entry-level job, that's actually pretty good. Again, everyone has different paths in their life, different careers, progressions. 500. Of course, that's before the government steals all of it, but ironically, the UAW votes for people and funds people who increase taxes. But I'm partially digress.
We're calling on GM, Wentzville Assembly, Local 2250 in Region 4 to stand up and strike. We're calling on Stellantis, Toledo Assembly Complex, Local 12 in Region 2B to stand up and strike. And we're calling on Ford, Michigan Assembly Plant, Final Assembly and Paint only, Local 900 in Region 1A to stand up and strike.
I believe that's the Bronco factory.
These 3 units are being called to stand up and walk out on strike at midnight tonight. The locals that are not yet called to join the stand-up strike will continue working under an expired agreement. No contract extensions. Though the contract is expired, most of your contract is still in effect. Management cannot change terms and conditions of work in your workplace. You do not become an employee at will. You cannot be fired or disciplined for no reason. This strategy will keep the companies guessing. It will give our national negotiators maximum leverage and flexibility in bargaining. And if we need to go all out, we will.
An interesting lack of transparency, not being very forthright. I guess, of course, people would argue the parent companies, the big three, perhaps are doing the same thing with their negotiation tactics, but I don't know, I'm one of those folks where I think, I don't know, in terms of he's saying, trying to be mysterious, I mean, they've had their 10 demands for quite some time. The debate is really how realistic are those, and would they bank up the companies? I think that's the big point of contention.
Everything is on the table. I encourage you to visit uaw.org/standup for everything you need to know about working under an expired contract. No matter what, all of us need to keep organizing. Rallies, protest, red shirt days, and community events.
Now, that's not the best marketing, since red shirts, pejoratively, you think of British people, like the turncoats or the British, and then communists, which some might say that's appropriate given their philosophies, but I partially digress. In terms of marketing, it's good because it's solidarity. They are all wearing similar attire. So it's good for the press and it's good for the brand. That makes sense, but it is interesting they chose red.
We must show the companies you are ready to join the stand-up strike at a moment's notice. And we must show the...
we already know that. I mean, every single survey when the UAW, they asked their members, will you be willing to strike? It was always in the high 90th percentile. So, I mean, I know this video is a little old, but it's one of those things where everyone knew that they were ready and willing to do it. But I guess his ideal is to further emphasize the point.
World that our fight is a righteous fight. Again, tonight at midnight, GM Wentzville Assembly, Local 2250 in Region 4, Stellantis Toledo Assembly Complex, Local 12 in Region 2B, and Ford Michigan Assembly Plant, Final Assembly and Paint Only, Local 900 in Region 1A, will stand up and walk out on strike. The rest of us will keep organizing and support them on the picket line. If we strike tonight, I'll see you on the picket line at Michigan Assembly at midnight. Tomorrow, we'll be holding a mass rally at the UAW Ford Joint Trust Building in downtown Detroit at 4 p.m. We will show our strength and unity on the first day of this historic action. All options remain on the table. National leadership will determine the appropriate targets and timing for further stand-up strike action. This is our generation's defining moment. The money is there, the cause is righteous, the world is watching, and the UAW is ready to stand up. This is our defining moment. Thank you.
I very much agree with him in the regard that it is their defining moment. This will make or break the automotive companies. I agree with that sentiment. Very much so, actually. Now, interestingly enough, of course, unfortunately, I'm one of those people where I want as much data possible. If you work on the assembly plant floor, I want to hear about it. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your experiences. What are your thoughts on this strategy? Now, interestingly enough, of course, they do not have the comments open. And they also don't have the like counter enabled. So I'll have to look into one of those third-party applications where actually it will tell you the real like versus dislike ratio. Now YouTube, in their censorship crusade, they got rid of the dislike button, or they got rid of the ability to see the dislike count, coincidentally, after the last presidential election. Or I'm sure that's a total coincidence. Now, this actually, they disabled the like button, so I don't know how many people like this. It could be 2 people. Could be 1,000. Could be, well, I was about to say it won't be more than the views. Could be 20,000. I don't know. That's also censored. Now, I was actually shocked. They do have the live stream comments open. Of course, I was too late to the game, so I could not contribute my incredibly cohesive thoughts, which I know everyone appreciates. That's kind of sarcasm there, because I know this is a divisive topic, though I appreciate all the correspondence as we learn about each other's perspective. Now, interestingly enough, from a strategy and political perspective, the comments were very much divided in terms of the strategy of only shutting down a couple areas of a couple plants. Now, in terms of overall support, they voted for him to be the leader, and he seems to be very well beloved by the UAW members. And interestingly enough, not an insignificant amount of the comments were very negative, specifically to that strategy point. So a lot of people are saying, why not strike all at once? Why don't we do that? Now, in terms of moves on political chessboard, I actually don't think that'd be beneficial to do a full strike right now. Even from Shawn Fain's perspective, I think from Shawn's perspective, his strategy is the apt one. Now, in terms of his ideal to only do partial strikes, it'll devastate those factories. Don't get me wrong, the specific factories and assembly lines. But if they were to strike all at once, they would have to use all their fund. Now, granted, they have a lot of money, $820 million. But let's do some quick math here. So they have $820 million, which, dear God, that's so much. Which, ironically enough, the big three are paying for their own demise, because That's coming from, the money they pay the UAW members. Now, they have $820 million. And what was it? They have about 146,000 members. So that gives you $5,616 per employee. Now, remember, they pay $500 per week. So let's divide that by $500. That strike would only fiscally be able to last 11 weeks, which, that's almost 3 months. That's, in terms of the fiscal calendar year, that's not too long. That really, don't get me wrong, it may devastate the fiscal quarter for GM, Ford, and Chrysler, but if you zoom out, it'd be a big win because they would be out of fuel, so to say. Now, that's not, I'm sure some benefactors might give them a couple of billion, but with the current funds they currently have right now, they wouldn't be able to sustain a strike for relatively long, so they run out of fuel quick. Also, the strike right now, not to be pejorative, well, perhaps just a bit, who cares? I say that because, fiscally speaking, dealerships have lots of vehicles to sell. Interest rates are jacked up. People aren't buying cars as much as they used to. If this was perhaps peak pandemic when everyone was, I was going to say right after the pandemic, when was it? People were foolishly going out and buying a bunch of vehicles. That would be the prime time to strike because that's when they would have the highest fiscal pain to the big three. And that's where they want to tighten the screws, so to say. So that would be the optimal time. Right now, there's not as much automotive demand from the end user consumers. Also, they could just, buy a Honda or Toyota, which will last, again, 1 million miles or a quarter of a century. My family still drives a 2001 Honda Accord. The thing is bulletproof, but I moderately digress. It is fascinating to see this perspective from Shawn Fain, and there's a lot of people speculating maybe he just wanted to show his power. And no matter what the big three offered, politically speaking, it was a good move to strike. Of course, that video came out, they published a video the day after the strike, the strike began, but so there's instances where before the strike, he polled everyone. The UAW, they're all overwhelmingly, they want a strike. So he's also giving them exactly what they want, while, because it's not a full, strike, they're not shutting down all factories, he's still kind of playing both sides of the ball, both sides of the game. It's one of those things where they're striking, but they could sustain the strike for much longer because they're not having to use the whole fund at once, because again, that would only last 11.23 months. So from his perspective, that seems to be a very politically apt move on the political chessboard, as I would metaphorically say. Although, perhaps he does play chess as well. Can't see what he does much in his free time. He's not put that on the YouTube yet. But let me know in the comments, do you think this is the quote-unquote winning strategy for the big three to get what they want? Well, they're not going to get what they want. They're going to get hosed. But this is the best strategy for the UAW members to get what they want. There are some people irate in the comments that they think they should do a whole shutdown at once. They're actually pejoratively calling him a weak leader. And again, maybe presumably this is for most of the UAW members in the live stream. Maybe some people entered or a third party. But if you're part of the UAW, let me know your sentiment. Do you think this is a prudent decision? Or would you rather have a whole shutdown where the funds would not sustain as long, but maybe it would have a greater impact on the business? Let me know. Again, I would love to hear what you have to say. Thank you, everyone, so much for taking the time to tune in today. Also, I know we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of September, so if you could click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, don't forget to take the time to like and comment the video. I really appreciate your feedback, whether you're on the front line of the UAW or in the corporate office at Ford. Your feedback makes the show much more interesting and it's able to make me update the videos with even more data, and it really helps it, I think, make a better experience. And also, the feedback improves the show because thanks to the comments, I realize I need to actually work on my enunciation as well as my articulation and slowing down a little bit when I'm speaking. So together, we're going to make the show together that much better, and I greatly appreciate your participants. Also, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.